Well, we're picking up in Hebrews, and thanks for joining me. As I told you, if you're a regular watcher, this is a little bit different environment for me. We're traveling right now, and I'm making these videos as we travel in various parts of the United States. And so the backgrounds will be changing and things, but we'll just press ahead. And today we're going to be looking at Hebrews chapter 2, verses 5 through 9. And what we're going to be looking at is this objection. Now, last time I went through verses 5 through 18 and kind of gave you an overview. Now we're going to take a little extra time, look at these verses more clearly, and see what they have in them in more detail. Very important. I think it's worthwhile taking our time, and I think it's really in light of what we read in chapter 2, verses 1 and 2. Let me just show you that. Probably a good act of obedience. It says, "For this reason we must pay much closer attention to what we have heard so that we do not drift away." And it says drift away from it. So this is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be spending a little extra time looking at these verses again. But let's review where we've been. We've talked about Jesus being the final revelation of the Father. He spoke in the past through the prophets and the fathers. In these last days, he has spoken to us through one person, his Son. So Jesus is that single revelation, final revelation from God. Everything else was pointing to him. Jesus is presented as the heir, the creator, the sustainer, the expression of God's glory, even the physical expression of God, the exact imprint of his being, as it says. He is our purifier, our propitiator, we can say, that he has propitiated our sin. He's satisfied God's wrath for us. He sits waiting. He's taken his seat at the right hand of God. He's sitting there waiting. And as we go through this, we're learning that he's waiting for his coming kingdom. He has a better name than the angels, Jesus does. He's called the Son. And as we discussed, that's tantamount is a claim to God. He is claiming to be God there, and the author is claiming that he is God. He, at his second coming, Jesus will be worshipped by the angels. Look at verse 6, for example. Let me just scroll back there a little bit. 1:6. Let me go back. He said, "And when he again brings the firstborn into the world," or we can translate that, when he brings the firstborn into the world again, that's an adverb, modifying the verb brings again, "let all God's angels worship him." And we also found out that Jesus is immutable. That is, he never changes. He doesn't change. The angels, sometimes they're winds of fire, sometimes they're winds. They're fit for use, we could say, but Jesus never changes. So let's go on now. We reviewed 5 to 18 last time. And what this section contains is a look at Jesus's humanity, why he became a man, and it actually makes the claim that he did, and then gives us 4 reasons why Jesus became a man. So this time we're going to look at the kind of the facts of his humanity, the fact that he did become a man. Next time we're going to look a little closer at those reasons why. So in verses 5 and 6 we start here, and we say, "He did not subject to the angels, to angels the world to come," about which we are speaking. So we first see this negative denial here that God never appointed angels to rule the world to come. I think the world to come is talking about Jesus's millennial kingdom, that Jesus is going to reign and rule over that kingdom, succeeding where Adam failed as the reign and ruler of the world. Then he turns to a more positive presentation, but someone has testified somewhere. Isn't that interesting how he does that? The writer of Hebrews, the speaker perhaps, does this regularly. Not exactly sure why. There's a certain amount of speculation, maybe He didn't specify that this was a psalm. Perhaps he forgot. Maybe he's getting older and forgetful. Maybe he forgot. That's possible, but not likely. He seems to ransack the whole Old Testament pretty successfully, so he definitely has God's word in his mind. Most commentators think that he says something like this. Someone has testified somewhere, or something similar to this. We'll see this in other times, because he wants to keep the focus on God and his word, and not the intermediary, the psalmist, the prophet. He's keeping the focus on God and his word. And I think that's probably safe to understand it like that. But anyway, he said negatively, he didn't give this, put the world subject to the angels. Positively, it says that God gave man the charge to rule and puts everything in subjection to him. What is man that you think of him? He's quoting the psalmist here. Or a son of man that you are concerned about him. And then he says, you've made him for a little while lower than the angels. You've crowned him with glory and honor. You've put everything under his feet. So there's this reversal that's coming. For a little while, he's lower. In the future, he's going to be ruling and reigning over things with the angels. We're never given that prerogative. Verse 9, he goes on here. He says, but we do see him. Let's finish verse 8. For in subjecting all things to him, he left nothing that is not subject to him. But he's going to make an important observation. Now we do not see all things subjected to him. This goes back to what we said in our overview, that there's an objection here. The angels seem to be these powerful, supernatural, supervising beings, and the author of Hebrews corrects that objection, addresses that objection, acknowledges that we don't see everything subject to Jesus right now, but also at the same time saying that this is not God's plan B, that God has always planned for the man to rule over the earth. So that's what he says here. We do see Jesus made for a little while lower than the angels because of his suffering death, crowned with glory and honor, so that by the grace of God he might taste death for everyone. Let's break that down a little bit, and I think you'll see a progression here. First, he said, who was made a little lower than the angels. This is referring to Jesus' incarnation. He came from heaven, became man, and was made a little lower than the angels. Next thing, crowned with glory and honor. This is his resurrection and his ascension to heaven. That this is the glory and honor that Jesus received from the Father. Because of that suffering death, he was crowned with glory and honor, raised from the dead, ascended to heaven. Then it says, so that by the grace of God he might taste death. So this is an act of God's grace, that Jesus tasted death, not in the sense that he got like a little hors d'oeuvre called death, a small bite of it. No, Jesus fully experienced it. When he says he's tasted death, we can imagine that as being, say, a mouthful of death. He got a full experience of death by God's grace for everyone. That's important, that Jesus' death was sufficient for everyone. Now, it's sufficient only for those who believe, you and I, for example, but it's sufficient for everyone. That's what he's saying here. This was an act of God's grace for Jesus to become incarnate, resurrected, ascended, tasting death for everyone. This is God's great act of grace. So we are living, if you can place ourselves on a timeline, between Jesus' first and second coming. We are enjoying the benefits of salvation and sanctification that we're going to talk about next time. We are living in light of Jesus' death, burial, resurrection, ascension. But we are living in anticipation of what he's talked about earlier, the world to come, a world that's going to be reigned over and ruled by Jesus. we're living now, and while we're living in this period of time, we can say this gap between his first and second coming, we need to live faithfully in light of his coming. We need to proclaim the Lord's death until he comes, as 1 Corinthians tells us to do. That we need to be living faithfully in light of his coming. That's the thrust of this letter. We want to receive that full reward for those who are faithful. We want to enter into what he's going to start talking about in chapter 3, this rest for the believer. We want to enter into that rest, which means to be living faithfully so that we will receive fully the reward of the faithful. So what's our challenge from this? So one of our challenges is to live today and really every day of our life until Jesus comes back in light of his coming. We know he's coming back. We already know from chapter 2, verses 1 through 4, that we must pay close attention, which we're trying to do here, so that we don't drift away from him. Hebrews 2:18, which is coming, I know, we'll be talking about that, but he offers us his power for both our salvation and our sanctification. So we want to depend on his power. We want to pay close attention to him, and we want to live in light of his coming and his coming rule over the earth. So let's do that, brothers and sisters. I know I'm trying. I pray that you are too. So God bless you, and may these studies keep you in the Word.